The crisp September air of Napa Valley carried the faint, sweet rot of fermenting grapes and the sharp bite of dry earth, a scent that once meant freedom to Veronica Hensley. On the morning of September 16th, 2020, she laced up her bright pink Hoka running shoes, tied her blonde ponytail high, slipped her phone into her armband, and stepped onto the CH/NH trail, the same dirt path she had run hundreds of times before. At 28, she was a physical therapist who spent her days rebuilding broken bodies and her mornings rebuilding her own spirit through the punishing rhythm of long-distance running. She was strong, disciplined, radiant, the kind of woman strangers smiled at on the trail because her presence seemed to brighten the oaks and manzanita that lined the path. That morning she never came home. Her silver sedan remained locked and untouched at the trailhead parking lot, a half-empty water bottle still sitting in the center console, like a promise interrupted. For the next 2 years, her boyfriend David Chen, her sister Jessica, her running friends, and an entire community would live inside a silence, so loud it drowned out every other sound in their lives. Then, in October 2022, a retired chef named Michael Petro took his truffle-hunting Kin pig named Rosie into a remote, unmarked corner of private oak woodland miles from any public trail. Rosie began to dig with sudden, frantic purpose. What she unearthed was not the prized black tuber Michael expected, but a dirt-caked plastic grocery bag containing Veronica's pink and white sports bra, black running shorts, a used condom still sealed in its wrapper beside an unrolled one, and a tampon. Items that told a story of violation and murder preserved perfectly in the cool, anaerobic soil. That single unlikely discovery, triggered by the instinct of a pig searching for food, cracked open a cold case and exposed a serial predator who had been hiding in plain sight among the vineyards and quiet suburbs of Napa County for years. This is not merely a true crime recounting. It is a journey through grief, persistence, chance, justice, and the fragile line between safety and danger that every woman who steps onto a trail must navigate. Advanced vocabulary note. Anaerobic describes an environment without oxygen. Here it preserved the evidence almost perfectly, much like how sealed memories can preserve both pain and truth until something forces them open. Idiom explanation. Hiding in plain sight means concealed yet completely visible to anyone who knows where to look, exactly as Mark Jennings lived among his neighbors for decades. Historically, this case echoes patterns seen in the Golden State Killer investigations of the 1970s, 80s, where ordinary men used mundane jobs, landscaper in Jennings's case, to access vulnerable spaces and where DNA databases, only made possible by the 1994 DNA Identification Act, finally provided answers years later. Philosophically, the story confronts us with Camus' absurd. The universe offers no inherent meaning or justice, yet humans create it through stubborn refusal to forget. In English learning terms, notice how suspense is built through short, punchy sentences contrasted with longer, descriptive ones, rhythm that mirrors a runner's breath when fear sets in. As the plastic bag was lifted from the earth that October morning, the long-buried truth began its slow, inevitable rise toward daylight. What small, seemingly insignificant action in your own life might one day unearth a truth you have long buried, or protect someone you will never meet? The first 48 hours after Veronica failed to answer David's calls unfolded like a slow-motion nightmare inside the beige walls of a Sacramento conference hotel. David paced the carpet in his stocking feet, redialing her number every 30 minutes while the television murmured meaningless noise in the background. Each unanswered ring widened the hollow place inside his chest until it felt large enough to swallow him whole. By 2 a.m., he was calling her best friend Sarah, then her sister Jessica in Seattle, then the non-emergency line of the Napa County Sheriff's Office, his voice cracking on every syllable as he recited her routine. Solo morning run, CH/NH trail, always home by 10 a.m., always text back by evening. When he finally reached the trailhead at dawn on Thursday, September 17th, the sight of her locked silver sedan, dust already settling on the hood, felt like a physical blow. Inside, her sunglasses rested on the passenger seat exactly where she always left them. The water bottle cap was still loose, the way she liked it for quick sips. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered in the morning breeze, an obscene intrusion on the golden grass and live oaks that had once felt like an extension of her body. Within hours, the parking lot became a staging area. White search and rescue trucks, a mobile command RV under the largest oak, topographical maps spread across folding tables, red grease, pencil marking probable routes and grid sectors. Frank Hewitt, the grizzled SAR commander who had coordinated searches since the 1990s Mount Vision fire evacuations, spoke in the calm, measured tones of someone who had delivered bad news too many times. German Shepherd Ranger and his handler Maria caught Veronica's scent from the driver's seat and followed it confidently for the first mile, tail high, ears forward, until the trail forked near a shaded creek bed. There Ranger stopped, circled, whined, doubled back, confused. The scent simply ended, as though Veronica had been lifted straight up into the sky. That moment marked the first fracture in hope. K-9 teams recast, ground pounders bushwhacked off-trail, a CHP helicopter thumped overhead scanning with FLIR cameras, drones flew tight grids through ravines, but the wilderness gave nothing back. An elderly couple, the Hendersons, reported seeing a blonde woman arguing with a man beside a dark blue pickup at a remote Lower Ridge trailhead around 11 a.m. Resources poured toward that lead for 6 precious hours before it evaporated into another dead end. On day 4, a college volunteer named Leo found a single bright pink shoelace snagged on manzanita thorns hundreds of yards off any maintained path, a perfect match to Veronica's hokas. The discovery electrified the command post. New grids formed. Volunteers crawled on hands and knees, sifting leaf litter and duff. Nothing else surfaced. Emotionally, David began the terrible oscillation between frantic hope and crushing certainty that she was already gone. Jessica flew down from Seattle and moved into Veronica's apartment, sleeping in her sister's bed surrounded by running metals and half-read novels, refusing to wash the pillowcase that still smelled faintly of her shampoo. Philosophically, this early phase embodies Kierkegaard's leap of faith, believing in a living outcome despite all evidence screaming otherwise, a choice that requires immense courage. Historically, the swift mobilization mirrored post 9/11 improvements in multi-agency coordination and the 2003 launch of Amber Alert protocols, yet the sheer scale of Napa's backcountry, rugged ridges, poison oak thickets, seasonal creeks that become impassable, defeated technology and manpower alike. In English learning, observe how the narrative uses sensory detail, the flutter of tape, the thump of helicopter blades, the faint shampoo scent, to immerse the reader emotionally, a technique called synesthesia that blends senses for deeper impact. Idiom. Dead end, literally a path that stops abruptly, figuratively any effort that yields no progress. Here both meanings collide painfully. As the command post lights dimmed on the 14th night and volunteers packed gear into truck beds, the silence of the oaks felt final. Yet inside David and Jessica, the refusal to accept that silence was just beginning to harden into something unbreakable. When the official search suspended on September 30th, 2020, how do you choose to carry a love that has nowhere left to run? A year passed, then 18 months, then 2 full seasons of ripening grapes and winter fog and spring wildflowers, each cycle carving the absence deeper into the people who loved Veronica. The yellow ribbons tied to trailhead oaks frayed and fell away, missing person flyers curled and bleached under the relentless Napa sun until her smiling face was only a pale ghost on the paper. Jessica transformed grief into relentless action. She administered the Find Veronica Hensley Facebook page with daily posts, old race photos, memories of Veronica teaching her little cousins how to stretch properly, appeals for tips even when hope felt delusional. On each anniversary, the local running community gathered at dawn for a silent memorial mile along the CH/NH trail. Dozens of runners moved as one body, footsteps soft on the dirt, balloons released at the trailhead signpost where David had taken her last photo. In the shadowy parallel world of Reddit's r/unresolved mysteries and true crime YouTube channels, theories multiplied. Accident. She fell into an unmarked ravine. Mountain lion, though no predation signs were ever found. Voluntary disappearance. She staged it to start over. Random predator. The 2022 flasher incident 5 miles away briefly revived that fear. Jessica read every speculation, reported the cruelest ones, and kept posting anyway. Meanwhile, the Napa County Sheriff's cold case binder, thick with topo maps, witness statements, the single pink shoelace photograph, sat on a metal shelf beside files for other vanished women from the 1980s and 1990s whose names are now mostly forgotten. Emotionally, David withdrew into work, coding late into the night, so exhaustion would quiet the what-if loops in his head. Jessica, conversely, burned brighter, channeling rage into advocacy, speaking at women's safety seminars about situational awareness without victim blaming. Philosophically, their persistence reflects Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. When suffering is inevitable, meaning can still be created through attitude and action. Historically, this phase parallels the long gaps in many pre-DNA-era cases. The 1979 Ed and Pat's disappearance, solved only in 2012 via renewed attention, and the rise of digital crowdsourcing in the 2010s. Web sleuths, the Facebook group model Jessica used, which democratized investigation but also spread misinformation. Advanced vocabulary, logotherapy, Frankl's school of psychology focused on finding meaning. Idiom burned brighter means intensified effort or emotion, often at personal cost. In English learning, notice the contrast technique. Short, stark sentences, the ribbons fell away. The side long, flowing ones describing community rituals, creating emotional waves that mirror grief's ebb and flow. Modern relevance. Today's runners use apps like Strava Beacon or Garmin LiveTrack to share real-time location. Many women now carry personal alarms or run with pepper gel, small technological and behavioral shifts born from cases exactly like Veronica's. When the cold case unit quietly closed Veronica's file in fall 2021, Jessica refused to let the story end. She understood that memory is a form of resistance. If the world tries to forget someone you love, what daily choices can you make to keep their light from going out? October 2022 arrived dry and golden, fire season tension thick in the air. Michael Petro, 68, retired after 40 years as executive chef at a high-end Yountville restaurant, had traded sauté pans for truffle hunting excursions with Rosie, his affectionate Kyun pig whose nose could detect Perigord black truffles buried 8 inches deep. That morning they drove his battered pickup onto private ranch land deep in the hills, permission granted years earlier by the owner who appreciated Michael's reverence for the land. Under an ancient coast live oak, Rosie suddenly dropped her snout and began to dig with manic intensity, snorting, pawing, refusing to be called off. Michael knelt, expecting the distinctive lumpy shape of a mature truffle. Instead, his garden trowel hit something unnaturally smooth and pliable. He brushed soil away with careful fingers and uncovered the edge of a translucent grocery bag. When he lifted it free, the contents were visible through the grimy plastic: a pink Radiant sports bra, black running shorts, a sealed Durex wrapper, an unrolled used condom, a tampon, all compressed together in a grotesque bundle. Sarah Petro recognized the bra immediately from 2-year-old news photos. Her hands shook as she photographed the bag exactly where it lay, orange survey ribbon already tied to the tree as a marker. They drove out to meet deputies on a remote fire road. Detective Dave Riley, now a veteran who had been a rookie during the original search, felt ice slide down his spine when he saw Sarah's phone screen. Within hours, the Oak Grove became a major crime scene. White Tyvek suits, metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs. The bag was rushed to the California DOJ crime lab in Sacramento. Technicians worked under HEPA-filtered hoods, battling 2 years of soil bacteria and temperature swings. Against steep odds, they recovered a full male DNA profile from epithelial cells inside the condom. Cody's returned a hit within 48 hours. Mark Jennings, 45, landscaper, prior misdemeanor indecent exposure conviction from 2011 that had forced him to provide a DNA sample. Surveillance began immediately. Jennings drove a work truck slowly past jogging paths at Lake Hennessy and Skyline Park, gaze lingering on women runners with a stillness that made experienced detectives skin crawl. A pre-dawn SWAT raid found him asleep in a sparse rental house. Inside his desktop computer, Hidden behind passwords lay terabytes of telephoto surveillance photos, hundreds of unaware women mid-stride, mid-stretch, midlife. Dozens featured Veronica, captured weeks before her disappearance. In the gray interrogation room, Jennings sat small and soft-spoken, eyes down, until Riley placed the lab report on the table. The monotone confession followed. Weeks of watching, memorized schedule, ambush on a secluded trail segment, assault, strangulation when she fought, separate burial sites for body and clothes. As part of a plea deal avoiding death row, he led investigators to a bay laurel grove miles away. Careful excavation recovered Veronica's remains. Emotionally, the Petros carried the double weight of horror at what they unearthed and quiet pride that their small hobby had delivered justice. Philosophically, the pig's instinct reminds us of Zen teachings on beginner's mind. Rosie had no agenda, no theory, only pure attention to the present moment, and that purity broke the case wide open. Historically, DNA databases have solved thousands of cold cases since the late 1990s. The 2001 identification of the Grim Sleeper serial killer is a landmark example. Jennings's prior minor conviction illustrates the broken windows theory applied to sexual offending. Early intervention can prevent escalation. In English learning, study how the paragraph builds tension through pacing, slow descriptive sentences when Michael digs, rapid short ones during the raid and confession, mimicking heartbeat acceleration. Idiom. Skin crawl conveys visceral revulsion. Modern relevance. Personal safety apps, trail cameras, community watch groups, all responses to predators who exploit isolation. When Rosie's snout hit soil that October morning, chance and persistence met, and justice, however late, arrived. How willing are you to trust the small, quiet instincts that others dismiss? Mark Jennings received multiple consecutive life sentences without parole in early 2023, ensuring he would die inside a California prison. Veronica's funeral was private, but the community needed a public farewell. The local running club and her family raised funds for a simple cedar bench placed at the CH/NH trailhead. Its bronze plaque reads, Veronica Hensley, Run Free, with the date of her last known photograph. Joggers pause there now, some leaving running medals or single pink shoelaces tied to the armrest. Napa County Parks added solar-powered emergency call boxes at major trailheads, cleared brush for better sight lines, double ranger patrols during peak running hours, and launched a Run-Aware campaign teaching situational awareness without blaming victims. Jessica continues the Facebook page, now transformed into an advocacy platform for trail safety and cold case awareness. David returned to coding but also began volunteering with search and rescue, running training trails so he can help the next family that waits. Emotionally, both have learned to carry grief without letting it carry them. Jessica through action, David through quiet service. Philosophically, the story closes the circle on Epictetus's dichotomy of control. We cannot control predators or chance discoveries, but we can control how we respond, with courage, with community, with refusal to let darkness win. Historically, this resolution reflects the power of post-2000 forensic genealogy and Cody's expansion, tools unavailable in earlier decades that have brought closure to thousands of families. In English learning, notice the use of parallelism in the final sentences, Jessica through action, David through quiet service, a rhetorical device that creates balance and emotional weight. Idiom. Carry grief means to live with sorrow without being crushed by it. Modern relevance. Every woman who now texts her location before a solo run, every community that installs a call box, every podcast listener who learns about grooming patterns, carries forward Veronica's legacy. The bench sits under the same oaks where she once stretched. Runners still pass, ponytails swinging, but now they glance at the plaque and remember. In the end, the wilderness did not win. A pig looking for truffles did. And because two ordinary people chose to act with care instead of walking away, a monster was stopped and a woman was brought home. What legacy of love and courage will you leave behind when your own unexpected moment arrives?